Have you ever felt guilty for wanting to stay home on New Year's Eve? In a world where everyone's posting their party plans, their champagne bottles, and their midnight kiss countdowns, you're looking at your couch like it's the only friend who truly understands you. Most people assume you're just antisocial or depressed, but psychological research tells a completely different story. People who choose to stay home during mass celebrations often score higher on autonomy and self-awareness. They're not avoiding life. They've figured out something most people are still learning. New Year's Eve promised celebration and connection. What it delivers is overstimulation dressed up as mandatory fun. Think about what happens when you actually go to one of these parties. You don't just show up, you prepare. You stress about what to wear, where to go, who'll be there. You calculate your social energy reserves and hope they'll last until midnight. By the time you arrive, you're already exhausted from managing expectations, yours and everyone else's. The countdown happens, confetti falls, and you're wondering why this moment that's supposed to feel magical just feels loud. Those who prefer staying home have recognized this transaction. They've realized that mass celebrations often trade genuine rest for performed enthusiasm, and they've decided the cost isn't worth it. Psychologists call this psychological autonomy, the ability to make choices based on your internal needs rather than external pressure. When you honor what you actually want instead of what you're supposed to want, that's not weakness, that's strength. Here's what makes this fascinating. The decision to stay home often comes after years of going out. These aren't people who never tried. They participated, they wore the glittery hats, they counted down at midnight. Then something shifted. Maybe they noticed how drained they felt the next day, not just physically but emotionally. Maybe they realized they were forcing joy instead of feeling it. Or maybe they just got tired of performing happiness on a schedule. Because that's what it is. Performance. Every party is a stage where you're expected to demonstrate that you're having the time of your life. The drinks, the dancing, the forced enthusiasm at midnight when a calendar flips to a date that humans arbitrarily decided was significant. It's exhausting, and the research backs this up. Studies on introversion reveal something crucial about how different brains process stimulation. Back in 1967, psychologist Hans discovered that introverts and extroverts have fundamentally different cortical arousal levels. Introverts don't hate people. Their brains just process social stimulation more intensely. A party that energizes an extrovert can completely deplete an introvert. It's not preference, it's biology. For introverts, staying home isn't avoiding celebration. It's energy management. It's recognizing that their nervous system has limits and respecting those limits instead of pushing through them for the sake of social expectations. They've developed what psychologists call sophisticated self-regulation, the ability to accurately assess their needs and act accordingly, even when it means disappointing others. But it goes deeper than introversion. About 20% of people have something called sensory processing sensitivity. If you have this trait, your brain doesn't just notice things, it absorbs them. Loud noises aren't just annoying, they're overwhelming. Crowded spaces don't feel full, they feel suffocating. Other people's emotions wash over you like waves, and when you're surrounded by dozens of drunk people forcing enthusiasm, it's sensory overload. Picture a typical New Year's party. Music so loud you can't hear yourself think. Bodies packed together. Emotional intensity cranked to maximum because everyone's trying to have the best night of the year. For someone with high sensory sensitivity, that's not fun. That's an assault on their nervous system. Staying home isn't antisocial, it's self-protection. Here's what society gets wrong. We've been taught that celebration must be loud, crowded, and public to be valid. If you're not out doing something, you're wasting the night. But research on well-being shows the opposite. Quality matters more than quantity. Meaningful matters more than memorable. And peace matters more than performance. People who stay home on New Year's have figured this out. They've rejected the cultural script that says everyone must celebrate the same way. They've looked at the tradition and asked a simple question. Does this serve me? And when the answer was no, they had the courage to opt out. There's a specific kind of strength required for this. Psychologists call it having an independent self-construal. It means your sense of identity doesn't crumble under social pressure. When culture says you must do something and you can look at that expectation and quietly say, no, I'm good, that's psychological autonomy at its finest. You're not being controlled by norms, you're being guided by self-knowledge. But it's not always comfortable. There's social cost to nonconformity. People will judge you. They'll call you boring or say you're missing out. They'll project their own insecurities onto your choice and assume something must be wrong with you. Because if you can opt out and be happy, what does that say about their need to participate? For people who stay home, that judgment becomes background noise. Their self-worth comes from within, not from external approval. They don't need strangers at a party to validate their happiness. They just need to feel it. And here's the paradox. The celebration designed to bring everyone together often leaves people feeling more alone. When you're at a crowded party surrounded by people you barely know, making small talk you don't care about, waiting for midnight like it's some magical reset button, you're more isolated than if you'd stayed home with people you actually love, or by yourself, doing something that actually brings you joy. The people who stay home tend to build their New Year's around intentional rest. They have quiet conversations that matter. They experience peace without needing witnesses. They understand that celebration doesn't require crowds or countdowns. It requires alignment with what actually makes you feel good. Studies show that people who honor their need for solitude report higher life satisfaction and emotional stability. When your choices aren't being filtered through other people's expectations, they become clearer. You stop editing your life into something acceptable for others. You start living it in all its honest complexity. This doesn't mean they hate people or traditions. It means they've chosen authenticity over obligation. They've decided that some celebrations deserve to be quiet, personal, and free from the pressure to perform joy on command. Now let's address the question that's probably in your head. How do you know if this is healthy versus problematic? Because there is a difference between choosing solitude and suffering from isolation. Loneliness is painful. It's wanting connection and not having it. It's the gap between your desired level of social contact and your actual experience. If you're staying home and feeling miserable about what you're missing, that's loneliness. That needs attention. But if you're staying home and feeling content, peaceful, or even relieved, you're not lonely. You're aligned. Your desired state matches your actual state. That's psychological health, not avoidance. What people who stay home understand is simple but profound. Celebration isn't one size fits all. Tradition isn't mandatory. And being alone on New Year's Eve doesn't mean you're lonely. It means you know yourself well enough to honor what you need, even when it's different from what everyone else is doing. There's something quietly radical about this choice in our current culture. While everyone else is forcing enthusiasm, these individuals are choosing authenticity. They're not missing out. They're opting into something better: rest, reflection, and the freedom to celebrate life on their own terms. What they've figured out is that January 1st is just a date. Humans made it significant. But significance doesn't require champagne and strangers. It requires meaning, and meaning is personal. Sometimes the truest way to celebrate is quietly, intentionally, without needing the world to validate your choice. That's not antisocial. That's self-aware. That's knowing the difference between what you're supposed to want and what you actually need. And having the courage to choose yourself, even when everyone else is choosing the crowd. So, if you're watching, wondering how you want to spend your New Year's Eve, remember, live life on your terms, and more importantly, you are not alone. You're just honest enough to admit that some celebrations are better honored in the company of your choice.